Welcome, and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Plumley, an assistant professor in the Department of Engineering Leadership and Program Management in the School of Engineering at the Citadel. Dr. Plumley, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And, first of all, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your background. You have a very long title, so I'm sure there's a lot to go with it. So what is your background and how did you get to be where you are?
Sure. So from the academic side, I've got a PhD in civil engineering from Clemson University with an emphasis in construction engineering and management. Along the way, I also earned an MBA and a project management professional certification. I've worked primarily in three different areas. I've worked in academic program and project development, worked in industry for a couple of years, and then the nonprofit arena through project management in developing countries. I've been teaching off and on since 2010 and started full-time at the Citadel in 2017. With regards to project work, I was involved with setting up a new business line at Fluor Corporation in disaster preparedness and management. I consulted with them for a few years, mainly working with large aerospace and pharmaceutical companies. But most of my project work is actually in developing countries, working with nonprofit partners. So I've overseen a few $1 million in economic development and infrastructure projects in rural Haiti. And I'm currently working on an ongoing partnership with Clemson University, the Citadel, and a major university in Guatemala for community infrastructure.
Like you said, you have that really big background when it comes to humanitarian work, especially in developing countries. How have you used program management and how can program management be used to really make that humanitarian work more innovative and to bring innovative solutions to humanitarian work?
So there's lots of organizations out there that are really good at fundraising and developing a relationship with communities around the world, but they don't necessarily have the expertise in managing the projects and developing technical solutions. And so that's where we come in. So I work with a team of experts at the Citadel and Clemson University, and along with students, we help develop solutions to improve the quality of life in these developing communities. And we also work to ensure that the projects are executed properly in the field. So we'll work with the local community and the project sponsor to design a solution, and then we'll create and manage a project plan to maximize the chances of success for those projects. And there's always a lot of moving pieces on these types of projects, whether it's political unrest, cost escalation, logistical constraints, or just various project conditions that are rapidly changing. So it's useful to have a structured way of managing these project aspects.
And you've had a lot of experience in these disaster zones, obviously, as you just talked about. How have you used innovation and how was innovation needed in those specific aspects, like dealing with civil unrest or, governments that aren't very cooperative and things like that?
So one of the biggest issues that we don't really necessarily think about on a daily basis in the US is our reliance on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We take things like clean water, power, sewer, easily navigable streets. We take all that for granted, but in a lot of areas, that basic infrastructure is not in place. So it makes things much more difficult just to live on a day-to-day basis, but even more so to work on projects. So we have to work with the local communities to find ways around that. For example, one of the projects we worked on was dealing with human waste, right? Everybody poops, but we don't want it to end up in our food and water. In the US, we usually have a sewer system or septic tanks to deal with that. But for the particular community we were working in, sewer systems were cost prohibitive and the geology didn't allow for septic tanks to be installed. So we had to explore what other technologies we could use. What we ended up using was a biodigester system that uses an anaerobic biological process to treat the waste. So you do your business in a normal toilet and the pipes from that go to a series of large bags, and these bags are seeded with microorganisms, and the waste sits in these bags, and there's this anaerobic digestion process that takes place, and the byproduct is treated waste and methane. So we actually treated the waste, but we were able to use the methane in the process to power the stoves in a local restaurant.
That's pretty innovative. That's pretty cool. So, you recycled those gases in ways that were productive, not only, not letting them into the atmosphere, but rather using them to help other businesses and people in the community, right?
Right.
Great. Well, speaking of germs and things like that, we're now in this COVID landscape where project management and program management may be a little difficult, a little harder. You're not face to face. So How has COVID changed that sort of world, and how might it be helping or hindering those sorts of project management projects?
We definitely had a lot of challenges in the project management world when COVID first kicked up. But I think that our response to COVID and how we've been forced to operate is going to change some industries for forever. This is going to shake up the world, particularly with regards to communications and stakeholder relations. We've learned to become a lot more efficient and effective with our digital communication. We've become a lot more cognizant on how to convey emotion virtually. It's a challenge for a lot of people to not be able to read other people's body language, but we've learned how to deal with that through being more clear in our words, whether it be written text or through video chat or even emojis now. So some companies have realized the cost savings of having this geographically distributed workforce, and a lot of those have decided that they're going to become more open to remote work going forward on these project teams.
And maybe turning that in a different way. You've talked about the importance of communication. You've talked about the importance of innovation and all those sorts of things. How does working at the Citadel and how does your program there, help with these projects that you're talking about? Because it sounds like you need a lot of background information and a lot of really smarts to kind of make those things happen.
Yeah, so we've got a fairly structured program in the way that we operate, but it also gives students a lot of flexibility to develop their own interests. So our program is structured with 4 core courses, 2 leadership courses, and then 4 elective courses. And those 4 core courses, they really focus on learning and applying principles and projects from the Project Management Institute's project management body of knowledge, and they apply those to an individualized capstone project. And so that's one of the aspects that I think is unique about our program, is being able for the students to apply these project management principles on their own project, and they get to take ownership of that. And then we've got the 2 leadership courses that help them develop the personal leadership skills and actually apply leadership theory to their projects and to their professional lives. And then the 4 elective courses give them a lot of flexibility in tailoring their own educational journey, whether it be through additional engineering courses or whether they want to focus on some of our program certificates in technical program management or systems engineering, or they can even step out into more of like a business administration or organizational leadership types of courses.
What kind of things can students expect if they're in this program? I mean, can you go off and kind of find your own program and project and make something happen, or are you sitting in a classroom a lot of the time?
Yeah, so I think that that's one of the unique aspects about our program is that capstone project. Students do get to develop their own project plan over the 4 core courses, and they end up with this comprehensive capstone portfolio and this presentation at the end of it all. And so it serves as a great talking point for potential employers, but students can also use this as an opportunity to develop either a pet project or something work related. And we've had some really great projects, and we've even had a student who used the concept he developed in our program to acquire a patent for his idea that he's planning on moving forward.
And Dr. Plumley, the students that take this course, are they remote? Are they actually at the Citadel?
So we do have both in-person in Charleston, South Carolina offerings, as well as online offerings for all of our courses in our program now.
And, so we've talked about all these things that you can really learn at the Citadel, translating that back to the world that we're in with COVID and the communication skills that are needed. How are you sort of teaching what people need to know when it comes to communication, when it comes to, knocking on the right doors or whatever you need to get done, greasing the wheels to make a project really work?
One of the other aspects of our program that I think is probably the most valuable is that we have students from a very wide variety of backgrounds. We have everything from PhDs in aerospace engineering to those that are fresh out of undergrad. We have lots of engineers, but we have students from every field. And so what that forces them to do is to be able to communicate with both technical and non-technical audiences, because our courses are very discussion based. We bring in case studies, we bring in current events. All of those are part of the weekly discussion in the courses. And you have to be able to talk competently to those different aspects to both technical and non-technical audiences through those discussions.
And you're also working on a lot of state-of-the-art types of things, as I understand. And, there's a project management sort of handbook in a way that is being updated fairly soon. How does that fit in, and how are you going to be teaching that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The project management body of knowledge is issued by the Project Management Institute, which is the world's largest nonprofit professional organization for project management. And so that's kind of our guide as project managers on how to structure our projects. It provides us the processes and tools and techniques for our project work. And our 4 core courses have been based on that. With the upcoming 7th edition of the Project Management Body of Knowledge, which should be released sometime early this year, it's going to undergo a huge overhaul. And we're talking probably the biggest change in the past 2 to 3 decades for this guide. And we know we're going to be moving from a much more prescriptive process-based model to a much more fluid principle-based approach. And it's likely going to be a lot more agile-centric. So this is going to be much more geared towards those fluid projects, those ever-moving projects where there's going to be a lot of changes and we need to be able to rapidly adapt to those changes.
What does that mean for future program managers? Does it mean a different way of doing business for them, or does it just mean a continuation of maybe how they've already been doing business and these handbooks are finally catching up?
It's going to be a little bit of a change of mindset for some folks, mainly because the new approach is going to be more focused on the actual the process and the deliverables, not so much on the different knowledge areas. So it's going to be on focusing on project outcomes and value. So how are we creating value for our client? And we need to be thinking that way. And that's the direction that we really should have been moving in for a long time now. And I think it's great that the Project Management Institute is pushing this forward, because if we're creating value for our customers, then ultimately at the end of the day, our customers are going to be satisfied and we're going to have a successful project. So, we can break it up into all of these different knowledge areas, the 10 different knowledge areas that we previously had, but these new performance domains that are focused on value are going to be much more applicable.
How do you translate that into the classroom? I mean, is this something that you had already been teaching, or is this going to be a change as well for the students?
We teach it in a little different way. We haven't explicitly addressed it because we want to ensure that our students are prepared for the PMP exam. And in our students, we have a 95% pass rate on the first time taking that PMP exam. So we want to prepare them to be able to pass that. And so we still have been teaching this values-based philosophy in understanding the stakeholders and being able to navigate their needs. But I think it's going to be a lot more explicit going forward. But it's also going to require us as a program to make it less prescriptive on how the students have to achieve these different goals and which different processes they're going to need to accomplish to get there.
And Dr. Plumley, thank you so much. We really enjoyed having you today.
My pleasure.
I'd like to once again thank our guest, Dr. Jeffrey Plumley. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Engineering Leadership and Program Management in the School of Engineering at the Citadel. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more information, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Citadel.